In gymnastics, the difference between a gold medal and a broken neck is sometimes just one bad landing, and the people who were supposed to prevent it often saw it coming. These are the stories of two world-class gymnasts whose coaches knew the danger, watched it happen in practice, and kept pushing anyway. The real question isn't how these accidents happened, it's why everyone around them let them. It was December 28, 1974, and the snow outside the CSKA Sports Club in Moscow was thick and heavy, the kind of cold that turned your breath into little clouds the moment you stepped outside. Inside the gym, the air smelled like chalk and old leather, and the sound of feet hitting the mat echoed off the walls. A 14-year-old girl stood at the edge of the floor exercise area, thin and quiet, her dark eyes watching everything around her. Her name was Elena Mukina. She had no mother, she had no father. She had been raised by her grandmother Anna in a small Moscow apartment, and the only thing in her life that ever made her feel like she was truly alive was the moment her body left the ground. Mikhail Klemenko stood at the side of the gym and watched her. He was a former Soviet gymnastics champion, a man who had spent his whole career coaching men, and he had never trained a girl before, but something about Elena stopped him. The way she moved was different. Most gymnasts at that age were still fighting their own bodies, still learning where their arms and legs were supposed to go. Elena moved like she already knew, like the air around her was cooperating. Klemenko told the people around him that this girl could be something the Soviet Union had never seen before. He was not wrong, but the path he was about to put her on would cost her more than either of them could imagine. By 1978, Elena Mukina was the best gymnast in the world. At the World Championships in Strasbourg, France, she walked onto the floor and did things that made the crowd go completely silent. She beat Nadia Comaneci. She beat Nelly Kim. She won the all-around gold medal and tied for gold on the floor exercise, then added 2 silver medals on top of that. She was 18 years old. She had invented moves that no female gymnast had ever done before. One of them, a full twisting double back somersault on the floor, was so new and so difficult that the sport named it after her, the Mukina. It was hers. She had made it. And for one brief shining moment, standing on the top of that podium in France, the world felt like it was hers too. But gymnastics does not stay still, and neither did Klemenko. Back in Moscow, the pressure was already building. The 1980 Summer Olympics were coming, and they were coming to the Soviet Union's own city, Moscow, home soil. The Soviet gymnastics program had never lost the women's team gold at the Olympics, not once, and losing it in front of their own people was not something anyone in the Soviet system was willing to consider. Every coach, every official, every person above Klemenko in the chain was watching. And Klemenko was watching Elena. He had decided she needed something new, something bigger, something that would push her score so high that no judge in the world could ignore it. He chose the Thomas Salto. The Thomas Salto was a men's move. It had been created by American gymnast Kurt Thomas and involved launching into the air, flipping backward 1.5 times, twisting 1.5 times, and then rolling out on the landing. On the men's side, where gymnasts were bigger and stronger and trained specifically for power, the move was already considered risky. For a woman, it was almost unheard of. The margin for error was nearly nothing. If you did not get enough height, your chin hit the floor. If you rotated even slightly wrong, the back of your skull took the impact. Either way, your spine was the thing that paid. Elena knew this. She felt it every single time she tried the move in practice. Something about it was never right. Something about the way her body moved through the air felt wrong in a way she could not fix, no matter how many times she tried. She went to Klemenko. She told him. She said the words out loud more than once in that cold Moscow gym where the chalk dust floated in the air like snow. She told him she was going to break her neck doing this element. She told him it was hurting her every time she landed. She told him she was scared. He looked at her and said that people like her do not break their necks. Then, in 1979, her body made a different decision. During training, Elena's leg snapped, a clean break. The doctors who examined her told her she needed rest, real rest, months of it. Her bone needed time to heal properly or the damage could be permanent. But the Olympics were less than a year away, and Klimenko could not wait. He had her moved from the hospital to the gym. He removed the cast himself. He put her back on the floor with a leg that had not finished healing, in a body that was carrying more exhaustion than most adults will ever know, and he told her to keep going. She obeyed. She always obeyed. That was the thing about Elena Mukina. She was not a person who gave up. She was not a person who walked away. The same quality that made her a world champion was the exact same quality that made it impossible for her to save herself. And now, with the Moscow Olympics just weeks away, she was running out of time to learn the difference. It was the summer of 1980, and the Minsk Palace of Sport hummed with the low noise of a training camp pushed to its limit. The building sat in the heart of Belarus, far from Moscow, far from the crowds that would soon fill the Olympic venues. Far from everything except the work. The floors were hard, the lights were bright, the air smelled like rubber mats and sweat. And somewhere in that building, every single day, Elena Mukina was doing the thing that was slowly killing her. Her leg had never fully healed. She could feel it every time she pushed off the floor, a deep ache that ran from her ankle all the way up through her knee. A reminder that the bone Klimenko had rushed back into service had not been given the time it needed. The weight loss workouts he had added on top of her regular training were making everything worse. She was burning more energy than her body could replace. She was sleeping badly. She was so tired some days that she had trouble crossing the street outside the gym before the pedestrian light changed. That was not a metaphor. That was her life. The best gymnast in the world could barely make it across the road. Klimenko was not in Minsk. He had gone back to Moscow for a few days, working behind the scenes to convince Soviet sports officials that Elena was fit enough to be named to the Olympic team. His whole career was wrapped up in that conversation. He had taken a teenage girl from obscurity and turned her into a world champion. Everything he had built, every choice he had made, every warning he had waved away, was riding on her being on that podium in Moscow. He had told the officials she was ready. He needed her to be ready. Back at the Palace of Sport, Elena was working through her floor routine with coaches from the national team. She had been told to practice the Thomas Salto into the foam pit, the deep, soft landing zone that gave gymnasts a safe place to work on dangerous elements without the full consequences of a hard floor. But on July 3rd, 1980, she was not practicing into the foam pit. She was on the platform, the hard surface, the real floor. No one has ever fully explained why. She moved to the corner of the floor exercise mat and set her feet. Her leg throbbed. Her body was carrying weeks of exhaustion that had stacked on top of months of exhaustion that had stacked on top of years of being told that pain was not a reason to stop. She breathed. She started her run. She launched into the pass that contained the Thomas Salto, her body rotating backward through the air in the way she had practiced hundreds of times, the way that had never once felt completely safe, the way she had told Klimenko over and over again was going to end badly. She under-rotated. Her chin hit the floor first, then the back of her neck took the full weight of her body coming down behind it. The sound was not loud. That is the thing people who witness these moments always say afterward. It was not loud at all. It was just a single impact, and then silence, and then Elena Mukina was lying on the floor of the Minsk Palace of Sport, and she was not moving. She could not move. Not her legs, not her arms, not her hands. She lay completely still on the hard mat while the coaches around her tried to understand what had just happened, while the other gymnasts in the building began to realize that something was terribly wrong. Elena Mukina, the woman who had stood on top of the world at 18 years old, who had beaten Nadia Comaneci, who had a gymnastic move named after her, was lying on the floor with a broken neck at the age of 20. And her first thought, lying there unable to lift a single finger, was relief. That is the detail that says everything about what her life had become. Not fear, not grief, not the thought of the Olympics she would never reach, or the gold medal Klimenko had promised her, or the career that was ending on a hard floor in a city far from home. Her first thought was that she would finally be allowed to rest, that the whip, as she had once described it, had stopped, that no one could push her anymore. The Soviet Union did not tell the truth about what happened to Elena Mukina. The officials who rushed to contain the story put out statements saying she had suffered a spinal injury but was not paralyzed, that she had all her reflexes, that she was recovering well. Both statements were lies, made days apart, which meant they were not mistakes. They were a plan. The Soviets understood that if the public learned what had really happened to their brightest gymnastics star, the questions that followed would be ones the system could not answer cleanly. Questions about Klemenko, about the cast removed too early, about a move so dangerous that Elena had predicted her own injury out loud, repeatedly, and been ignored every single time. So they buried it. They made Elena smaller in the official record, reduced her importance so that her injury seemed less important too. They moved on to the Moscow Olympics, where the Soviet women won the team gold they had always won, where a gymnast named Elena Davidova stood on the podium and said the most honest thing anyone connected to that games managed to say. She said that another gymnast should be standing where she was standing. She said Elena Mukina deserved the reward more than any of them. Klemenko left the country. He moved to Italy and lived there until he died of cancer in November 2007. He never returned to Russia. The woman whose neck he had broken stayed in her wheelchair in Moscow for 26 years, rarely speaking about what had happened, watching the sport that had consumed her from a distance. The Thomas Salto was eventually banned for women entirely. Two skills in the gymnastics code of points still carry Elena Mukina's name. She died on December 22, 2006. She was 46 years old. On her gravestone in the Trokhorov Cemetery in Moscow, beneath her image, 4 words were carved into the black marble. Great gymnast, world champion. Nothing about the foam pit she should have been practicing into. Nothing about the cast removed too early. Nothing about the 15-year-old girl in Tokyo who had heard Elena's story, spoken her name out loud just days before her own accident, and was about to find out what gymnastics did to the ones it could not stop. It was May 1988, and the city of Tokyo was bright and loud and full of the kind of electric energy that only comes when the world's best athletes gather in one place. The World Sports Fair had drawn gymnasts from across the globe, and the competition floor smelled like chalk dust and floor wax, and the lights above the vault runway were the kind of white that made everything look sharp and clean and almost too real. In the stands, cameras were rolling. Judges sat behind their tables with their scorecards ready. And at the far end of that runway, a 15-year-old girl from San Antonio, Texas, stood with her hands at her sides and her eyes fixed on the vaulting horse at the other end. Her name was Julissa Gomez. She had grown up in a family that understood what it meant to work for something. Her mother, Otilia, had been a migrant farm worker who became a teacher. Her father, Ramiro, had worked the fields and then learned to weld. They had moved their whole lives around their daughter's dream, splitting the family across 2 states so that Julissa could train with the right coach in the right gym in Missouri. Her father, Ramiro, had packed up and moved with her to Blue Springs while her mother stayed behind in Texas. That was the kind of family they were. The kind that believed if a person had a gift, you did whatever it took to protect it. And Julissa had a gift. By the time she was 13, she was on the United States national gymnastics team. By 14, she was competing internationally, her dark hair pulled back tight, her body small and precise and powerful in the way that only years of daily training can produce. She was especially strong. On the uneven bars and the balance beam, the events that required the most control, the most patience, the most exact understanding of where your body was in space at every single moment. The people who watched her train said she had the kind of focus you could not teach, the kind that came from wanting something so badly that everything else in the world went quiet. She wanted the Olympics. She had wanted them since she was small enough to watch Mary Lou Retton on television and feel something move in her chest. The 1988 Seoul Olympics were close now, close enough to touch, and to get there, her new coach, Al Fong, had told her she needed one thing more than anything else. She needed the Yurchenko vault. The Yurchenko was not a normal vault. It did not allow you to see where you were going. The gymnast sprinted down the runway, hit the springboard in a back handspring motion with both feet, and launched backward over the horse completely blind, flipping and twisting through the air before landing on the mat on the other side. The scores it produced were high. The margin for error was almost nothing. If your feet hit the springboard wrong, if they slipped off the edge or landed even slightly to the side, your body did not stop. Your momentum carried you forward, and instead of your hands finding the horse, your head did. Everyone around Julissa Gomez knew she was not ready for this vault. Her former coach, Bela Karoli, had seen it. Her current coach, Al Fong, had seen it. Her teammates had seen it. In practice, she was missing the springboard. Not sometimes, regularly. Her feet would slip off the edge and she would have to bail out of the run, her heart pounding, her body understanding the danger, even when the adults around her were pretending it was not there. A teammate named Shellstack watched her train and later said something that is almost impossible to read without your stomach dropping. She said you could tell it was not a safe vault for Julissa to be doing. She said someone along the way should have stopped her. No one stopped her. Alfong told Julissa she needed to keep doing the vault because the scores were too important. The Olympics were coming. The numbers on the scorecards had to go up. And so Julissa Gomez kept running at a piece of equipment that kept nearly breaking her because the people responsible for her safety had decided that a gymnastics score was worth more than the risk sitting right in front of them. There is one more detail about that day in Tokyo that makes the whole story almost impossible to hold in your head. During the qualifying rounds of the competition, before the vault final, Julissa had been talking about Elena Mukina, the Soviet gymnast who had broken her neck in 1980, 2 weeks before the Moscow Olympics, trying a move her coach had forced her to learn. Julissa knew that story. She had heard it. And Mikhail Klemenko, the very coach who had pushed Elena Mukina past the point of safety and then left the country after she was paralyzed, was reportedly in the building that day in Tokyo, watching the competition from somewhere in the crowd. The world was giving Julissa Gomez every warning it possibly could. It was whispering the ending to her before it happened. And still, on May 5th, 1988, she walked to the end of the vault runway, shook out her hands, fixed her eyes on the springboard, and began to run. If she made this vault clean, the scores would go up. If she made this vault clean, the Olympics became real. If she made this vault clean, everything her family had sacrificed would start to mean something. She did not make it clean. Her foot slipped off the edge of the springboard and her body kept moving. That is the thing about momentum. It does not care what you wanted to happen. It does not stop because you are 15 years old or because your father moved across the country for you, or because the Olympics were finally close enough to feel real. Julissa's foot slipped and her head hit the vaulting horse at full speed. And the gym in Tokyo went the kind of quiet that does not sound like silence. It sounds like the whole world holding its breath. She did not get up. The doctors at the Japanese hospital worked to stabilize her, performing a tracheotomy to help her breathe. But sometime in the hours that followed, the oxygen hose connected to her respirator came loose. No one noticed for 15 hours. 15 hours without proper oxygen to a brain that had already been through catastrophic trauma. By the time anyone discovered what had happened, Julissa Gomez was gone in every way that mattered. Her body was still alive. But the girl who had taped gymnast to her bedroom wall and dreamed about standing in Seoul was not coming back. Her family brought her home to Houston and cared for her for 3 years. She died on August 8th, 1991. She was 18 years old. The year after her accident, gymnastics officials finally allowed the U-shaped safety mat around the springboard to be used in competitions. The mat had already existed. It had been approved for practice. It had been banned from competition because no one in charge had decided the risk was serious enough to change the rules, until Julissa Gomez proved that it was. 2 girls, 2 coaches who would not stop, 2 sports that looked at the warning signs and looked away. The question that gymnastics still has not fully answered is the simplest one of all. How many times does someone have to say they are going to get hurt before the people in charge finally listen?